was June 26, 2024, just after 6:40 p.m. inside the execution chamber at Huntsville Unit in Texas. The air was suffocating, thick, tense, and heavy with years of pain. Ramiro Gonzales lay strapped to the gurney, his arms outstretched, the cold needles of the IVs already buried deep in his veins. The fluorescent lights above buzzed, casting an almost sickly glow over the room. The silence in the chamber was unbearable. Beyond the glass, the Townsend family sat motionless, their faces etched with the scars of 2 decades of suffering. Can you imagine what that must feel like? To sit there looking at the man who took everything from you, the person who shattered your family, leaving a hole that could never be filled. Their eyes, filled with rage and sorrow, were fixed on the man who had once been a stranger, but now was an undeniable part of their nightmare. The warden's voice broke the stillness, echoing across the room. "Do you have any final words?" Romero's breath caught in his chest. The years of silence had come to an end. He opened his mouth, the words coming slower than expected. "I want to say I'm sorry. I took someone precious from this world. Bridget, I know I can't make this right, but I hope you found peace." Was it genuine? Or was it just another performance from a man who had spent his life manipulating everyone around him? The words hung in the air, but for the Townsend family, the pain was too fresh, the wounds too raw. Can you forgive someone who took your loved one, who stole their future? Could you look into their eyes, hear them say they're sorry, and believe it? I want you to think about this for a moment. Imagine yourself in that room. Would you be able to forgive? Or would you feel that cold, burning anger that nothing could ever quench? I want to hear your thoughts. Do you believe Romero's apology was sincere? Drop a comment below. Let's talk about it. As the seconds stretched on, the family remained silent, their faces a mix of disbelief and acceptance. The man who had taken Bridget's life, who had coldly ended her future, was finally confessing. But was this really an apology? Or was it just the last piece of a story he had manipulated for years? Before we dive deeper into this chilling tale, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to stay with us as we peel back the layers of this complex case. What led Romero to speak? What twisted path did he follow to this moment? The truth is darker than you could imagine. Stick with us. Cold Case Unraveled. It's every parent's worst nightmare, a child gone missing without a trace. For 4 long years, Bridget Townsend's family held on to a thread of hope that she might return. But each passing day seemed to bury that hope deeper. Her disappearance was a mystery that no one could solve, a nightmare that no one could wake from. Have you ever lost someone? Felt that gut-wrenching, paralyzing fear that you'll never get the answers you need? Imagine feeling that for years without closure. Bridget was only 18 when she vanished on January 15, 2001. A bright, spirited young woman, full of promise and dreams of escaping the confines of her small Texas town. She had everything to live for. Yet, in a single moment, her life was stolen. The people closest to her, her family, her friends, were left shattered, lost in a world where their loved one had simply disappeared. Her boyfriend, a small-time drug dealer, was the first to be questioned. He claimed he had no idea where she went, that she just disappeared. Investigators searched the area, chased down every lead, and questioned anyone who could have had answers. But Bridget was gone, leaving nothing behind but an empty room and a family drowning in the mystery. Can you imagine the devastation? The ache of not knowing? Of having so many unanswered questions that eat at your soul, each day getting harder to survive without some kind of closure. And after months of fruitless searches, the police were left with nothing but a cold case file and fading hope. The posters of Bridget that once covered the walls of every store were now gathering dust. But here's where the story takes a chilling turn. 3 years later, in 2004, deep inside a Texas prison, Ramiro Gonzales was serving time for a different crime: the kidnapping and brutal rape of another woman. He had been a threat to society for years, but no one had expected him to confess to something even darker. One morning, something in Romero changed. He asked to speak with a prison guard, claiming he had information about Bridget Townsend. At first, no one believed him. How could this man know anything about her disappearance? They were wrong to doubt him. When asked how he knew, Romero spun a tale of a Mexican drug lord and a shady boyfriend. His story was a web of lies, but what could be more dangerous than the truth lurking beneath those lies? Romero knew exactly where Bridget's body was. I want you to think about this. What would you do if you suddenly found out the person who had been hiding in plain sight behind bars was the one who took everything from you? Would you want answers or would you want revenge? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I'm eager to hear what you think. The moment Ramiro Gonzales spoke, the room fell into an unsettling silence. What had started as a lie, a story built on a twisted web of deception, now began to unravel. The truth emerged slowly, reluctantly, like a dam breaking after years of pressure. Can you imagine how the investigators must have felt, sitting across from a man who had been nothing but a predator for years? And then he starts to confess. How do you even begin to process something like that? Romero's initial story, the one about the drug lord and Bridget's boyfriend, didn't hold up under questioning. With each lie, the walls closed in on him. The more investigators pressed, the more the truth seeped out. At first, he claimed he was only involved in hiding Bridget's body, that he was an accessory to a crime he didn't commit. But when they challenged him further, something broke inside Romero. He finally admitted the chilling truth: he was the one who had murdered her. Alone. The weight of that confession seemed to settle over him like a storm cloud, but the real horror was just beginning. Can you imagine the moment of realization? What if you'd been standing there, listening to him unravel the truth? You would have heard the words he could no longer keep inside. "I kidnapped her," Romero confessed. "I raped her. And then I shot her. Twice. In the head." The casual, cold way he spoke about it left no room for doubt. He was no longer hiding. There was no drug lord. There was no boyfriend. Just a predator who had destroyed a life full of potential, of dreams, of love, all for nothing. Romero explained that he had been desperate for drugs when he contacted Bridget that night. She had answered the phone, her voice full of hope and warmth, unaware that it would be the last conversation she would ever have. He showed up at her house, broke in, and when she tried to escape, he dragged her out of the house, kicking and screaming. She begged for her life, pleading for a chance to live. "I'll do anything," she said. But nothing would stop Romero. No amount of begging would change the fate that awaited her. He drove her to a remote area, raped her, and then, without hesitation, shot her twice in the head. There was no remorse in his voice, no regret in his eyes, just a cold, detached recounting of a life taken for no reason. Romero then led investigators to the remote field where he had buried her, his steps deliberate, his voice almost flat as he described the scene. Can you even begin to imagine how the officers must have felt, walking with him, knowing they were about to uncover something horrifying? As the car pulled into the desolate stretch of land, the air felt different. It was heavy, thick, with an unspoken understanding of what was to come. Romero sat shackled in the back of the patrol SUV, his eyes staring out the window, distant, as though he were walking toward the inevitable and yet at peace with it. The officers in the front of the car exchanged glances. They had heard the confessions, they had seen criminals break under pressure before, but something about Romero's tone, the way he spoke almost nonchalantly about ending a life, unsettled them. The gravel crunched under the tires as the vehicle slowed, pulling to a stop in a patch of dry, barren land. Romero, still eerily calm, pointed towards the horizon, just a few feet ahead. "Dig there," he muttered, almost as if this moment held no weight for him. His words echoed in the air, but they carried a chilling finality. No one had been prepared for what they would find, but now, as they followed his direction, the dread of what they would unearth felt almost palpable. The officers stepped out, the heat from the Texas sun pressing down on them like an iron. They led Romero across the cracked earth, the landscape barren, empty. No shade, no comfort. Just the raw, dry brush and the faint rustling of wind through the mesquite trees. Romero's steps were slow but deliberate, his eyes never once straying from the ground in front of him. He knew exactly where to go. And as they reached the spot, his words fell like a death sentence. "Dig there." What happened next was almost too much to bear. The sound of shovels striking the hard earth, the soft scraping as they carved into the ground, was the only noise in the otherwise still world. With every stroke, a sickening anticipation built, as if the earth itself was fighting to keep the secret buried. Was this really it? Were they about to unearth the final, undeniable proof of Romero's horrific crime? And then it happened. A plastic bag emerged first. A faint, unmistakable smell of decay lingered in the air, carried by the wind like a warning. Slowly, agonizingly, they pulled the bag free, and as it was opened, the horrifying reality of what lay beneath became undeniable. Bones. Human bones. Shattered fragments of a life that had been stolen, hidden away in a shallow grave for over 3 years. The skull, still intact, told the chilling story of Bridget Townsend's final moments. 2 bullet holes were visible at the back of her head, an answer to the unasked question that had haunted her family for years. Was it a random act? A robbery gone wrong? Or something far darker? It wasn't just the fact that her body had been buried in this lonely place, it was what Romero had left behind, the broken pieces of someone's soul. Someone's daughter, sister, friend, lover. How does a person live with that? How could Ramiro, knowing what he had done, lead them to this exact spot, without so much as a flicker of regret in his eyes? The officers stood frozen, the magnitude of the moment weighing heavily on them. And just then, something inside them shifted. The case they had been investigating for so long, the mystery they had tried to crack, now had a face. A name. A killer who had lived in their midst, concealed by years of lies. What would you feel in that moment? The crushing realization that a life had been lost, hidden in the ground, right beneath your feet? Could you push past the grief, the horror, and continue with your job? The truth had been buried, but now it was being unearthed. And with it came the undeniable knowledge that nothing could bring Bridget back. Not the confession, not the killer's final words. Nothing. The clock was ticking. June 26, 2024, the day that would forever mark two families, two stories, one life lost and one life ending. Ramiro Gonzales lay in a cold, sterile chamber, strapped to a gurney, awaiting the moment his life would be taken in return for the life he had stolen. His final meal had been a simple one: chicken fried steak, mashed potatoes, green beans, and sweet tea. A meal fit for a man about to face the consequences of his actions, but nothing could ever make up for what he had done. As the final hour drew near, Ramiro was calm, almost disturbingly so. His body still, his face betraying no emotion, yet his mind, no doubt, was racing. How had he come to this moment? Could he truly be at peace? Was it enough that he had confessed? That he had begged for forgiveness, even if it was too late? Outside the execution chamber, the air was thick with anticipation. Bridget Townsend's family had waited for this day for years, 23 long years of unanswered questions, of torment, of grief. And now they were standing on the precipice of justice. But what did justice truly mean? Could the death of the man who murdered their daughter, their sister, ever erase the pain? Could it bring Bridget back even for a moment? No. But it would give them something they had been craving for so long. Closure. The satisfaction that, in the end, the law had done its part. David Townsend, Bridget's brother, spoke to the press with a steady voice, but anyone who listened could hear the years of pain behind his words. "Justice is done," he said. "This has been a long and painful journey. He can say he changed, but we remember what he did." For the Townsend family, this wasn't a victory. It wasn't something to celebrate. It was an ending. The end of a chapter that had scarred them for life. Bridget's mother, Patricia, was blunt. "I don't forgive him," she said. "A lot of people have hard childhoods, but they don't murder. He chose that path and he got what he deserved." The words were cold, but so was the reality of the situation. No amount of remorse from Ramiro could undo the devastation he had caused. Inside the chamber, Ramiro's final words came out with a quiet, almost defeated air. "I want to say I'm sorry. I took someone precious from this world. Bridget, I know I can't make this right, but I hope you've found peace. To her family, I pray you heal. I pray God gives you strength." And with that, Ramiro Gonzales's heart stopped. The execution was complete. The cycle of violence, deceit, and pain had come to its final conclusion. There was no more doubt, no more appeals, no more twists in the story. Ramiro was gone. But for the Townsend family, the pain would never fully fade. How do you process the end of something like this? Do you feel relief, or do you still carry the weight of what was lost? The Townsend family had finally seen justice, but would it ever be enough? This story didn't end with the execution. It ended with the realization that justice can't erase the past, but it can stop the cycle of pain from continuing.